"You're embarrassing the family," my sister hissed at the country club. "Your clothes are Walmart, your car is 8 years old." She was right. I was embarrassing to her. I smiled. "You're right. I'll change." Next week, I showed up in a custom suit driving a Tesla. She beamed. Finally. Then the club manager approached. "Ma'am, your membership has been declined." My sister turned pale. "What? Why?" He pointed at me. "This gentleman bought the club. And you're—" The first thing my sister did when I walked into the club dining room was look at my shoes, not at my face. Not at the hostess trying to seat us. Not at the fact that I had driven 2 hours after a 12-hour day and still showed up, because my mother said, "Please, Simon, just this once. Don't start anything." She looked at my shoes and winced. "God," Vanessa muttered, leaning toward me with that smile rich people use when they want cruelty to look polished. "You actually wore those here?" I glanced down. Brown leather. Clean. Nothing special. "They're shoes," I said. "They're tragic," she said. My mother made a soft sound. "Vanessa." "What?" Vanessa lifted one shoulder. "I'm helping. I was 38, a senior banker in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I had spent most of my adult life being the family's useful embarrassment. Useful because I handled numbers. Useful because I fixed things quietly. Useful because when my father made a bad investment, I was the one who untangled it without telling anyone else. Embarrassing because I never played the role they wanted. My car was 8 years old. My watch was practical. My suits were off the rack, tailored once, worn until they earned retirement. Vanessa, meanwhile, lived like every hallway was a runway and every lunch was a press event. The waiter poured water. Vanessa leaned closer, voice low. "You're embarrassing the family," she hissed. "Your clothes are Walmart. Your car is 8 years old. Everyone notices." I looked at her, then at the room, then at my father pretending to study the wine list even though he always ordered the second cheapest red and called it balanced. Then at my mother, who had perfected the art of silence so well it might have been her religion. A couple at the next table glanced over, then glanced away. My mouth went dry. My hands felt cold. My brain, the same way it always did when something mattered, started counting. 4 people at my table, 3 witnesses within earshot, 2 staff members near the bar, 1 sister who thought humiliation was a management tool. Vanessa smiled again. "You could at least try." "It's a country club, Simon, not a bus stop." I nodded slowly. "She's right," my father said without looking up. "Presentation matters." There it was, the family language. Presentation. Standards, optics, fit, never honesty, never kindness. I picked up my water glass, took 1 sip, set it back down carefully. Vanessa watched me like she was waiting for me to sulk. Instead, I smiled. "You're right," I said. She blinked. "What?" "You're right. I'll change." Her whole face lit up, not because she thought she'd hurt me, because she thought she'd fixed me. "That's all I've been saying," she said. Finally, dinner moved on. My mother relaxed. My father started talking about dues and committees and who had gotten onto which board. Vanessa talked about a charity gala like she'd personally invented philanthropy. I barely spoke. I just listened and documented. That part matters, because people always think moments like this create a plan. They don't. Moments like this confirm one. I already knew 2 things Vanessa didn't. First, the country club was in deep financial trouble. Second, their debt had been quietly packaged into a distressed asset sale through a holding structure my firm had helped review. Not because I wanted the club. I didn't. At least not at first. But 3 months earlier, one of my clients had backed out of an acquisition and asked if I wanted first look at the paper. I'd said yes. Numbers first. Emotions later. That was how I lived. That was how I survived my family. By the time dessert arrived, Vanessa was back in good spirits. She even reached over and patted my wrist. "See," she said, "this is why you need me." I looked at her hand until she removed it. Across the room, the club manager, Robert Keene, was talking to a staff member near the office. He caught my eye for half a second. Just half a second. Enough. Vanessa noticed nothing. She was too busy telling my mother, maybe now Simon can finally stop dressing like an accountant during a divorce. I didn't correct her. I was a banker. And I was very much not divorced. Just single, private, and apparently offensive to people who thought restraint was failure. The check came. My father reached for it automatically. Vanessa stopped him. "No," she said brightly. "Simon should get this. Consider it the start of his transformation. She laughed at her own joke. I paid. Of course I paid. Then I stood. I should go, I said. Vanessa smiled. Next week is the membership brunch. Wear something expensive. I will, I said. She beamed. I walked out without another word. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind her that my 8-year-old Lexus was paid off, that my retirement accounts were boring and healthy, or that half the people she was trying to impress were leveraged to their hairlines. I just went home and finished what I had already started. The next week, I showed up in a custom Navy suit, stepped out of a new Tesla, and watched my sister's face glow with relief. Finally, she said. Then the club manager approached our table holding a folder. Ma'am, he said to Vanessa, your membership has been declined. She laughed once. What? He pointed at me. This gentleman bought the club. Vanessa turned pale, and I smiled. I'm Simon Mercer, 38, commercial banker, Charlotte-born, Charlotte-raised. I work in structured finance, which sounds glamorous if you've never actually done it. Mostly it means I spend my days in glass conference rooms trying to stop rich people from making emotional decisions with spreadsheets. The funny part is, I'm good at it professionally and terrible at it personally. My family trained that into me early. Vanessa is 41, 3 years older, and has been treated like the visible success story since we were kids. She was pretty. I was dependable. She was naturally social. I was intense. She was a leader. I was good with details. Family language again. Translation, she was allowed to take up space, and I was rewarded for making myself useful. When we were children in South Park, our mother used to say, Vanessa opens doors. Simon keeps them from closing. At the time, I thought that was praise. Later, I realized it meant I was expected to do the maintenance work while someone else got photographed in the doorway. My father ran a regional insurance brokerage. Good money, better ego. He believed appearance was a moral category. He ironed polo shirts. He called old cars a public confession. He thought people who clipped coupons lacked ambition. He also refinanced our house twice and hid the second one from my mother for 7 months, so his values were selective. Vanessa inherited his appetite for display. I inherited his pattern recognition, and thankfully, none of his need for applause. By 26, I was already the one they called when numbers got ugly. First incident. My father had guaranteed a friend's development deal without reading the loan covenants carefully. The project stalled. The guarantee got called. He sat in my apartment in 2014, loosened tie, sweating through his collar, and said, "This cannot get out." I asked, "Did Mom know?" He said, "Don't be dramatic." That phrase, another family classic. I spent my weekend restructuring the exposure through a secured line against a commercial property he still owned free and clear. I saved him 6 figures and, more importantly to him, dinner party humiliation. On Monday, he told my mother Vanessa had helped him think things through. I remember that clearly because I was in the kitchen when he said it. Vanessa didn't correct him, she just took a strawberry from a bowl and smiled. I swallowed it. I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. Second incident. My mother wanted to join the country club 5 years ago, the one Vanessa worshipped. The initiation fee was higher than they wanted to admit, and their liquid cash was tighter than their clothes suggested. Vanessa said, "It's not about money, it's about access." My father said, "Families invest in standing." They asked if I would bridge them for a few months. That was the phrase. Not lend, not pay. Bridge. I asked how much. My mother named the amount softly, like saying it quietly changed it. I transferred the funds that night. No contract. My mistake? 3 months became 10, 10 became 18. Whenever I asked, Vanessa said, "Why are you making this tacky?" Eventually, my father repaid part of it. Not all. Enough to say he had. And somehow, in every version of the story told afterward, the club membership was something they had earned and I had merely overreacted about. Third incident. 2 years ago, Vanessa hosted an engagement dinner at a restaurant she couldn't afford but felt entitled to curate. Her fiancé at the time, Grant, was a private equity man with white teeth and dead eyes. At dessert, his card declined. He laughed like it was funny. Vanessa froze. The waiter stood there trying to become invisible. I covered the entire bill before Vanessa even looked at me. Outside, beside the valet stand, she said, "You didn't have to make such a big show of saving us." I said no one was making a show. She said, "You always do this thing where you want us to feel indebted." I had just saved her from public embarrassment, and somehow I was the aggressor. That was the pattern. They used what I could do, then resented me for being able to do it. And because I wasn't flashy, because I didn't spend money in visible ways, they treated my stability like a character flaw. I rented a sensible condo long after I could afford better because I liked having low overhead. I drove my Lexus because it worked. I wore simple suits because nobody serious in banking is impressed by a man dressed like a peacock with a line of credit. Vanessa called me Midwest rich without the Midwest. We are not from the Midwest. That never mattered. What mattered was the role. She was the family brand. I was the family infrastructure. And infrastructure is only appreciated when it fails. The club made all of it worse. It gave Vanessa a stage, committee luncheons, holiday galas, tennis whites, charity auctions where people bid on things they didn't want to impress people they didn't like. My sister acted like a membership card was a blood title. "Some places still have standards," she said once. I asked, "Financial ones?" She didn't answer. By then, I already knew the club was carrying deferred maintenance, shrinking corporate event revenue, and a debt profile that looked elegant from across the street and ugly under fluorescent light. A lot of legacy places survive on one thing: people being too sentimental to admit the balance sheet is rotting. This one was rotting. I saw it by accident. One of our clients, a hospitality group, circulated a confidential review on underperforming luxury assets in the Southeast. The club was on the list. Months later, a special purpose entity connected to a lender approached our firm about possible restructuring scenarios. I was not the lead. I was just in the room. But then, I started pulling the thread. Membership attrition, unfunded capital needs, bridge debt, a quiet tax dispute, vendor arrears, the kind of numbers that make elegant people start whispering in hallways. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I need to say that plainly. I wasn't sitting in the dark plotting how to destroy my sister's brunch calendar. At first, I just saw an opportunity, a distressed property in a prime location, repositionable, undervalued, and if I'm being honest, emotionally funny. Still, I hesitated. Because the voice says, "Don't make a scene." Because the voice says, "Be the bigger person." Because the voice says, "You know how Vanessa is." I did know how Vanessa was. That was the problem. I also knew how I was. I let things slide too long. I translated cruelty into stress. I translated entitlement into insecurity. I translated theft into family complexity. I had spent years telling myself that because my sister's behavior was familiar, it was manageable. It wasn't. One night, 6 weeks before the dinner where she called me embarrassing, I was on the phone with my mother. She said, "Vanessa worries about how you come across." I actually laughed. How I come across? She thinks people misunderstand you. No, I said, she understands me just fine. She just doesn't like that I'm not performing well for her friends. My mother went quiet. Then she said, "You know your father, and I just want peace." There it was again. Peace, meaning compliance. I leaned back in my desk chair and stared at the city lights outside my window. "Mom," I said, "when exactly has peace ever required me to be smaller?" She didn't answer. That's another family pattern. Silence where accountability should be. I thought maybe buying the club would be an investment. Then Vanessa made it personal. Then my father agreed with her. Then the role I'd been assigned my whole life finally became useful. Because if they wanted presentation, I could present. If they wanted optics, I could give them optics. If they wanted a better car, a better suit, a better version of the brother they kept trying to edit, I could do that for exactly one morning. Not to impress them, to end something. After the dinner, Vanessa texted me at 11:14 p.m. about time. "Proud of you for finally listening." A minute later, "You need a real tailor. I can send mine." Then, "And least something decent before the brunch." People remember arrivals. I stared at the messages in bed and actually smiled. Not because they were funny, because they were evidence. People who build their whole identity around hierarchy get reckless when they think they've won. I replied with one line. Already handled. The next morning, my father called. His voice had that careful cheer men use when they want credit for not being openly rude. Your sister says you took her advice well. I heard her. You should have years ago. I let that sit. Then I asked, did you ever think it was strange that you only respect my financial judgment when it benefits you? Silence. Then, why do you always twist things? There was no point continuing. Wave 1 was private pressure, exactly like that. Calls, texts, little corrections framed as concern. Vanessa sending links to luxury dealerships. My mother saying, this could be such a fresh start for your image. My father adding, at your level, optics matter. At my level. I made 7 figures in good years, more than enough to buy every stupid signal item they associated with success 10 times over. I just preferred assets to applause. That difference offended them. Meanwhile, the acquisition moved. Quietly, the seller wanted speed and discretion. The lender wanted the problem off its books. I created a small acquisition vehicle through an LLC, brought in a partner for a minority stake, and negotiated operational control conditioned on a short transition period. Receipts matter, so here are a few. The signed purchase agreement hit my inbox on a Thursday at 6:42 p.m. The wire confirmation for the earnest money landed Friday at 9:11 a.m. The final approval from the lenders committee came Monday morning. Robert Keene, the club manager, sent a careful email that read, looking forward to an orderly transition and your guidance on member communication. I saved every message in a folder called Mercer Club. The custom suit arrived Wednesday. Navy, clean shoulders, quiet fabric. No showy lining. The Tesla got delivered Friday. I chose it because Vanessa would notice it from orbit. Again, not revenge. Communication, there's a difference. Then Wave 2 started, practical harm. Vanessa had no idea I was buying the club, but she did what she always did when she sensed movement. She tried to convert it into control. She called and said, for brunch, sit with us, but let me do the talking. About what? Membership expansion, committee restructuring. There may be bored people there. I almost laughed. She was coaching me for a room I was about to own. Later that day, I got a message from my mother. Please don't mention old tensions. Vanessa says this could be good for all of you. Good for all of you. Not good for me. Not good because they were sorry. Good because they thought they were upgrading their brother into something presentable. Then my father emailed me. Emailed. Subject line, appearance. I still have it. 3 bullet points. Get a haircut somewhere serious. Wear French cuffs. Do not bring up business unless asked by the right people. The right people. I opened the email twice just to confirm it was real. That's the thing about this kind of family. Their cruelty often sounds so silly on paper that you doubt your own memory. That's why documentation matters. On Saturday, I met Robert at the club office before opening hours. He showed me the member delinquency reports, vendor contracts, deferred maintenance file, and a list of pending membership reviews. Vanessa's account was in there, not delinquent, something uglier. Her annual renewal depended on a liquidity verification process after a bounced assessment payment had triggered review. She had submitted documents late, then incompletely, then not at all. Robert, being a professional, said it carefully. Her file is unresolved. I asked, was she notified? Yes, multiple times. He turned the monitor so I could see. 3 emails, 2 mailed notices, 1 phone log. My sister, who lectured me about standards, had not actually met the club's current financial disclosure requirements. I sat back in the chair. Has anyone else intervened? Robert hesitated, then said, your father attempted to. Of course he did. He asked for flexibility. And? Robert's expression stayed neutral. Policy required completion before brunch seating privileges continued. There it was. Concrete answer. I asked for copies. He printed the notices. I put them in the folder. That afternoon, Vanessa called again. What are you wearing? Navy. Good. And the car? Handled. She lowered her voice. I knew you could do better. Honestly, Simon, this may sound harsh, but people treated you like an afterthought because you let them. That line landed harder than the first insult. Because it contained the one thing I hated admitting, she was partly right. I had let them, not because I deserved it, because endurance can become identity if you're not careful. I asked, what happens if I don't fit your version of things? She laughed lightly. You won't have to worry about that anymore. No conscience, no curiosity, no awareness that she was saying the quiet part out loud. That night I opened the folder and laid everything across my dining table. Purchase agreement, wire receipts, manager emails, membership notices, my father's appearance email, Vanessa's texts. I looked at the stack and thought about all the years I had mistaken my silence for maturity. It wasn't maturity. It was fear with good manners. The next morning, 2 hours before brunch, my mother texted, "Please be easy today." I wrote back, "I will be clear." She didn't respond. When I pulled into the club lot in the Tesla, 3 valets turned at once. That made me tired, actually. How quickly people bow to packaging. Vanessa was already outside in a cream dress and sunglasses too big for her face. She saw the car and slapped my arm like we were co-conspirators. "Oh my God," she said. "There you are." Her smile was real, warm even. That part surprised me. Not because she was kind. Because for one brief second I saw how much she genuinely believed she had improved me. "Now this," she said, looking from the car to the suit, "is what I'm talking about." My father came down the steps, stopped, and nodded once in approval. I can still feel what that did to my stomach. Approval bought with costume. My mother looked relieved enough to cry. Vanessa linked her arm through mine. "Finally," she said. That was the word. Finally. As if I had arrived. As if the years before this were some long, embarrassing draft. Inside, members turned. I knew some of them professionally. A few did the subtle double-take people do when they place someone from a boardroom in a social setting. Vanessa glowed. This was her favorite version of family, the version where proximity could be mistaken for accomplishment. Then Robert stepped toward us, holding the file. That's when I stopped arguing and started enforcing. Robert had the exact face of a man who hated public discomfort, but loved policy. He stopped at the table, folder in hand. "Good morning," he said. Vanessa smiled up at him with her club voice. "Robert, we'll need the terrace table." He looked at her, then at me, then back at her. "Ma'am," he said, "your membership has been declined, pending unresolved compliance review." She laughed immediately. Not because it was funny, because rich embarrassment often starts as disbelief. "I'm sorry? Your renewal documentation remains incomplete," he said. "As of this morning, your privileges are suspended." The smile stayed on her face another full second before it broke. "What are you talking about?" My father stood up. "There must be some mistake." Robert opened the folder. "No, sir. My mother's fingers went to her pearls. Actual pearls. Actual clutching." Vanessa looked around, aware now of who was watching. That's when she lowered her voice and hissed, "Handle this," to Robert, like he was staff in her house. Robert did not move. "Additionally," he said, "you should be aware that ownership of the club has transferred effective this week." My father blinked. Transferred to whom? Robert turned and extended one open hand toward me. "This gentleman." Silence. Real silence. Not dinner table silence? The kind with impact. Vanessa stared at me, then at Robert, then back at me. "No," she said. "I didn't sit down. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, yes." She stepped back like I'd slapped her. "What did you do?" That line told me everything. Not how, not when. What did you do? Because in her mind, any boundary she didn't control was aggression. My father recovered first. "This is some kind of stunt." I looked at him. Signed Tuesday, funded Wednesday, effective Friday. Robert, bless him, slid the transition memo from the folder and set it on the table. My mother whispered, "Simon." There was fear in it now. Not fear for me. Fear of public rearrangement. Vanessa's face had gone pale under her makeup. Her voice came out thin. "You bought the club?" "I did." "Why?" I almost told the polite version. "Investment. Preservation of legacy asset. Strategic repositioning." Instead, I gave her the truth. Because I was tired of financing rooms full of people who confused taste with character. That landed. Several heads turned. My father snapped. "Simon?" I looked at him and said the sentence I should have said years earlier. "You do not get to use me privately and rank me publicly. No speech. Just that." Vanessa's eyes filled not with sadness but with outrage. "You did this to humiliate me." "No," I said. "Your paperwork did that. I just didn't save you from it this time." Robert very quietly said, The notices were sent in October, November, and again last week. Witnesses matter. Facts said by neutral people matter more. Vanessa whipped toward him. "You could have called me," Robert replied. "We did." My father reached for the memo. His hand shook. "Reverse this," he said to me in a low voice. "Right now." There it was. No apology. No reflection. Just command. I said no. My mother tried a different route. "Simon, sweetheart, people are staring." I turned to her. "Yes," I said. "They usually do when the truth shows up." That was the breaking point. Vanessa lost control first. Not screaming exactly. Worse. That breathless, frantic whisper people use when panic collides with vanity. "You can't do this. I'm on committees. I host things here. These are my friends," I said. "Then they can visit you somewhere your documents clear." She actually swayed. My father grabbed her elbow. One of the women from her luncheon circle stood halfway up, then sat back down when she realized this was not salvageable with social smiling. Robert kept going because professionals understand timing. "You may submit updated documentation for review," he said. "Until then, access is suspended." Vanessa stared at me like she had never seen me before. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe I had hidden too well. She said, very softly, "You waited." "Yes." "The car." "Yes." Her mouth opened, closed. For the first time in my life, my sister understood what it felt like to be managed by someone calmer than she was. My father leaned in close enough for only me to hear. "This is cruel." I looked at him. "No," I said. "Cruel is teaching someone they can insult the hand that always catches them." Then I stepped back and nodded to Robert. That was the irreversible part, not the purchase. That had already happened. The enforcement. I had instructed management that no exceptions were to be made on Vanessa's file. No informal extensions, no family interventions, no verbal workarounds. Policy only. Same for every member. Same for her. Same for my parents if they tried to attach themselves to her access. Robert had it in writing. So when my father said, "We'll discuss this with the board," Robert answered, "The new ownership structure has dissolved the old board pending reconstitution." My mother made a small, shocked sound. Vanessa looked like she might actually faint. I didn't linger. That matters too. I didn't stand there soaking in it. I didn't lecture. I didn't do victory. I just picked up my sunglasses from the table and said, "Enjoy the rest of your morning." Then I walked out. Behind me, I heard chairs scrape. Heard Vanessa say my name like it was a threat and a plea at the same time. Heard my father start on that angry, formal voice he used when he wanted to bully staff. Heard Robert answer with the even tone of a man reading policy to a wall. When I got to the front steps, one of the valet boys opened the Tesla door for me with both hands. His expression was careful. He knew enough to know something had happened. I got in, closed the door, sat there for a second with both hands on the wheel. My pulse was steady. That surprised me, because I had imagined revenge as heat when I was younger. This wasn't heat. It was clarity. Before I hit the highway, Vanessa called, then my mother. Then the family group chat exploded. "Mother, Simon, please call." "Father, this has gone too far." "Vanessa, you are insane." "Mother, we can fix this privately." Privately, always privately. I ignored them, went home, made coffee and emailed Robert. No exceptions. No verbal reinstatements. Document all contact from the Mercer family. He replied, "Understood." That evening, Vanessa showed up at my condo, pounding on the door. Through the intercom, she said, "Open the door." "No, I just want to talk." "You had years. You planned this." "Yes." "You made me look ridiculous." "You handled that yourself." Then came the line, "We're family. That's why I gave you so many chances." The next morning, my mother offered a soft, useless apology. My father emailed to call me vindictive. I answered with one sentence. Public disrespect started at your table long before it reached your club. Weeks later, the club was stable, the rules were enforced, and my family texted less, more carefully. Vanessa sent one last message. "I miss when things were simpler." I replied, "They were never simple. I was just easier to use. Access to me is not a family right."